If you ever come to India and buy a food from a roadside stall, they will give you the food wrapped in this. This is banana leaf. For thousands of years, they have been practicing this. If you go to any remote village, when they will serve you food, they will serve you the food in this, which they call pattal in their countryside language. Now, this has been their ecological practice, not because summits like Paris and Glasgow tells them to do so, because now we are in a climate mess. They have been doing this because their ecological sense, their ecological consciousness has been advanced. So advanced that they don't just preserve nature, they worship nature. They are crazy people. Somebody is worshipping the trees, somebody is worshipping the rivers. Such has been their ecological consciousness for thousands of years. Now, if you accuse these people of backtracking from this phase down and phase out and backtracking from coal and methane deadlines, something is really wrong in your assessment. This is very, very unfair. Why it is unfair on many grounds, I will tell you this. What is India's emission? I will talk about India because I don't have China's data. Nobody has China's data. So I can talk only about India. So what has been India's contribution in the global emissions from 1850? 4.7%. What is Europe's contribution? 33%. And in case you are saying that Europe is a continent, India is a country, let's talk about the population because it's the human beings that are contributing to these emissions. So Europe's population is 1.5 to 1.8 times less than India. So with such a lesser population, if you are contributing 33%, this is absolute carnage. And what is India's per capita emission? 4 point, no, not 4 point, I think it's 1.96 tons of CO2. And what is, let's talk about USA, America. So what is USA's contribution? 25%, which is huge. And what is USA's per capita emission? 17.96. So you have a country whose contribution is somewhere around 1.96 and you have another country whose contribution is somewhere close to 17.6. How can they both dine in the same kitchen? No, this is very, very unfair. To top it all, you are not giving them the adequate resources. Why is world's largest democracy not part of NSG, Nuclear Supplies Group? So you are not giving them the technology, you are not giving them NSG membership, you are not giving them the proper financial resources. Because in 2009, these developed nations agreed to grant $100 billion to developing nations, from which they backtracked. And in today's valuation, it becomes more than $1 trillion. So how do you expect them to join in your coal and methane deadlines? And then you cry foul and say, hey, you overnight changed the tone and the rhetoric of the summit from phase out to phase down. No, this is very, very wrong. I think Switzerland's minister was not happy why these developing nations changed the tone of summit from phase out to phase down. Switzerland is the same country which has bought $6.5 billion of fighter aircrafts in 2020, a year in which WHO FAO is saying that 1 billion people went into chronic hunger and 2 billion people were in malnutrition. In these times, this is the country which was buying $6.5 billion of fighter aircraft, a country which has not fought any war for the last 200 years. But let's not take individual pot shots at countries because Switzerland, I believe, is a beautiful country. It's a paradise on earth. And people there are really good. It's a beautiful country. What I'm trying to say is that developed nations need to show some sensitivity that overnight developing nations cannot shun their coal. 2/3 of their energy dependency is on coal. How can you expect them to overnight do this transition? They can only phase down because, and they are doing well, really well. Because if you talk about a country like India, their solar power was somewhere close to 4 gigawatt in 2014. Today it's more than 50 GW. India is probably the only country which is on course to meet the Paris target. Not only meeting the Paris target, they have even upped the ante and they have raised their renewable target from 450 gigawatt to 500 gigawatt. But some countries are not happy why developing nations are stretching their net zero deadline. So India has declared net zero as 2070 and some countries are not happy about it. I will tell you why this is grossly unfair. There are developed nations who have picked in 1979 and even then they want their net zero by 2050. And there are developing nations which have not yet picked Why are you expecting them to declare net zero by 2050 or 2040 or 2030? This is very, very insane, insanely unfair. So, developed nations ideally should have been declaring their net zero by 2030, which they are reluctant to do. And you are expecting developing countries which are not yet peaked to declare their net zero by 2050. But let's not talk about net zero. These net zero thing is all about jingoism and rhetorics, because the problem is this, that when summits like these look at these issues, they look at the next 100 years. When governments look at these issues of climate mess, they look at probably the next 10, 15 years. But when individuals and communities, they look at these problems, they look at tomorrow. Will there be food on my plate tomorrow? Will I be able to feed my family tomorrow and the day after? So this is creating a divide, an unnecessary tug of war between these developed countries and developing nations. What we need to understand is that the idea of globalization, where we see huge consumer market in developing nations, this has to be at least introspected now. Why is a product like electric dryer being forced into a country like India, which has 300 days of sunlight? So why are you expecting, if your headquarters is in Silicon Valley, why are you expecting your company's headquarters to be constructed in a way in a city like Chennai in India with glass walls to trap unnecessary heat, to release emissions, and then you will need air conditioner for sure? So this is something we need to at least address this issue now. A country like India, where communities have given up their lives to save ecology. You know, there's a community in India, in Rajasthan, Bishnois. They have given up their life to save trees. You know that? When British India was under British control, and the British soldiers used to come to cut the trees because they wanted a Forest Act, and under those under the purview of the Forest Act, they thought that gives them the license to cut trees, because if you are installing a cigarette factory, then cigarette and this tobacco can be grown, but you still need paper to roll it. So you need to cut millions and millions of trees. And these people, these Bishnois, they used to worship the Khejuri tree. And they fought till the end against this law, and they have given up their life. Not just this community. Across India, there are so many tribes which have worshipped. Still, they are worshipping. There is a day called One Mahotsav. It's going on for thousands of years. There are many tribes, and it's not just about India. If you talk about the Amazon tribes, if you talk about the Summers, if you talk about the indigenous tribes in Australia and many other places all around the world, they have been directly in sync with nature. But what you have taught them? You have taught them that you guys are primitive. What you need is our supermarkets, where we will wrap these food packets in plastics, in aluminum foils, and these things, this is not cool, this is not woke. So this is the end result, what we are seeing in the form of a huge climate mess. So this is why I am saying it's unfair to accuse developing countries of not joining on coal and methane, because it's largely your doing after all. And in a country like India, where I'm saying this ecological consciousness was so advanced for last thousands of years, they have been worshipping trees, rivers, and whatnot. The joke is that if the whole world starts to celebrate Indian festivals, half of the climate problems will be gone. But this is just a joke. What is the final solution? Let these people, these influential people who have gathered at summits like COP26, Glasgow and Paris, let them enact laws and talk about the deadlines, which is also good at the macro level. But at the micro level, right from the families and individual communities, we have to start going back to our old way of living a life where we were directly in sync with nature and ecology. We have to start going back to this, which we have conveniently replaced with plastics, with aluminum foils, and all those products which are not working in developed countries, but these companies are trying to make use of those products because they have their investment. So all those insecticides and pesticides which are now banned in developed countries, now they're trying to sell it to developing nations. because they have their own investment and they need their ROI. Who cares for the world? So this is something we need to introspect upon, that we don't need to purchase a product just because it's working in other parts of the world. No, does it suit me? Does it suit my family, my community, in my localized atmosphere? I will not buy electric dryer when I have 300 days of sunlight. I am not going to construct glass walls just because you have this glass walls office in somewhere in your headquarters. I am going to do what suits me most based on my ecological consciousness. And this idea of ecological consciousness has to then grow inside out from bottom up. Only then, when these micro and macro efforts come together, only then we are going to save this planet.